Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Colonel Marty Witiziak, Chairman of the SDSU War Memorial Committee. Welcome to the 27th Annual War Memorial Wreath Laying Ceremony. We are here today to honor San Diego State former students who died during their military service, the brave Aztecs who paid the ultimate price for our country's freedoms with their lives. Each year, we observe this annual tradition during homecoming week. Many of the Aztecs whose names are on the memorial left this campus willingly to serve our country and were never able to return. We are grateful to them, and as we begin our homecoming weekend with celebrations and reunions, we keep them in our thoughts and in our hearts. The SDSU War Memorial is a living monument, and because of the terrific work of SDSU Librarian Emeritus Robert Fikes, we were able to research and confirm a new name that belongs on this monument this year. First Lieutenant Robert Khan Shudoin. Khan, as he was known to his family and friends, is the 240th Aztec whose name is etched in the granite of this memorial. You will hear more about his service and sacrifice later in the program, but I want to acknowledge his family that is here today and his friends in the audience as well. His sisters Margie Roberts and Michelle Ryan, Khan's nephew and SDSU alumni himself, Jeff Tylacker, and Jeff's son, Khan's great nephew, Jack Tylacker. Jack is also a current student here at SDSU and also Khan's former classmates from high school. Two of them, Steve Snyder and George Manali, were able to join us as well. Thank you for all of you for being here today. And once again, our utmost appreciation to our research team headed by Robert Fikes for all the great research he does locating the information that helps us identify those who have earned a spot on this memorial. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to stand as the SDSU Color Guard presents the colors. It'll be followed by the Navy Band of the Southwest with the national anthem, and then the Reverend Dr. Jim Smith with the invocation. Please remain standing. Please be seated. We are pleased to have with us today a tremendous supporter of veterans programs and our military connected students here on campus. She also happens to be the president of San Diego State University, Adela De La Torre.
Thank you so much, Colonel Wojciak. I want to welcome everybody today and good morning. This is a very special time. This happens to be the 27th anniversary of this ceremony at SDSU. And we want to show our respect and gratitude to the 240 members of our SDSU family lost in military service. We do this because they were Aztecs and because we reflect San Diego, a heavy military city. It's who we are. It's also something we are incredibly proud of. And in fact, when we look at the number of military associated individuals here in San Diego and in our campus, we have over 400,000 active duty and veterans in San Diego. At SDSU right now, we have 5,000 students who are enrolled in military connections, ROTC, active duty, veterans or reservists, and many who are direct family members of those who serve. Military support programs at SDSU, Vet Success on Campus programs since 2009 with the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, Women's Veteran Success Program, Troops to Engineers Program, Military Ally Program, which drives awareness and support of veterans among the entire community of students, faculty, and staff. Troops to College Committee facilitates and shares best practices for supporting veterans across our campuses, departments, and functions. SDSU consistently ranked among the best schools in the nation for military and veteran programs and support services. The memorial behind me has grown this year from 239 to 240 names. Thank you to Robert Fikes, a retired SDSU librarian who does research for the committee. He discovered the records of First Lieutenant Robert Kahn Jodoin. Dr. Dadis will share more about him, but importantly, this is the first addition to the memorial since 2016. Personally, on behalf of SDSU, we give thanks to First Lieutenant Jodoin for his service and sacrifice. And we welcome his family and friends who have joined us today. This memorial is a reminder of those we have lost and the importance of the global connections and diplomacy that we strive to create through higher education. If we forget that connection, we forgot our history, and we risk repeating the worst moments of it. Thank you again for being here for this important day. And I now would like to turn back to the Colonel. Thank you.
Thank you, President De La Torre. Just some background information about the monument itself. In the mid-1990s, a group of alumni, mostly from World War II, wanted a way to remember their classmates that were lost in that war. The founders, as they were known, entrusted this war memorial to the committee and SDSU alumni to continue their work. We had big shoes to fill, but here we are 27 years later, and I hope that I can say that we've made them proud. The committee values the support of SDSU Alumni Board of Advisors, and we are also lucky to hear on homecoming weekend from the president of the Alumni Board of Advisors, Samuel Brown.
Thank you, Colonel. My name is Samuel Brown, and I'm the proud president of the SDSU Alumni Board of Advisors. It is an honor for me to represent SDSU alumni here at the 27th Annual War Memorial Laying of the Wreath ceremony. To our active duty military here today, and to those SDSU alumni who are veterans, we extend a special welcome. Thank you for joining us today. As a Valles tribal member with many family members who have served our country in wartime, I have a deep respect and appreciation for our military service members. I would like to introduce a few veterans here today who are joining us. U.S. Army veteran and Councilman Adrian Brown, U.S. Army veteran Johnny Shaw, and U.S. Army veteran Justin Amador. The SDSU board has a deep appreciation for the sacrifices of all our military members who has served or are currently serving. It is a privilege for us to maintain this monument along with hosting this annual ceremony. The founders were alumni who originally built this memorial to honor their friends and classmates who went off to war and never made it back. The loss of those classmates was felt very deeply here at San Diego State. The former students whose names you see etched here on the memorial were loved and are profoundly missed. This year, we add a new honoree to the memorial. When we learn about the deeds of people like First Lieutenant Robert Chadoin, it is incumbent upon us to ensure that their lives and deeds are honored here. Monuments like this we see here today do not exist on every campus in the United States. For us, this is a memorial, is a must, and is an important part of who we are as a community. So today, we salute our included Aztec hero and those that came before him. We must also never forget the young people who still volunteer and currently serve so that we may stand here in this moment freely. The SDSU Alumni Board recognizes our own duty to continue honoring these fallen service members with sincere gratitude. They made the ultimate sacrifice for us, and their efforts are not forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. At SDSU, we have a very prominent student veteran organization, and it's one of the larger ones in the country. It's well established, and every year we like to include them in this ceremony so we can hear from the current generation who serves. So I'd like to welcome retired Navy veteran and Secretary of the SDSU Veterans Organization, Kelly Sorber, for a few words.
Good morning, honored guests, esteemed faculty, and fellow students. My name is Kelly Sorber. I stand proudly before you today representing the Students Veteran Organization of San Diego State University. I am a third-year social studies teacher with single subject focus. I'm going to become a history teacher when I grow up. I'm also a 20-year veteran in the Navy, who is a child of two veterans that served 20 years in the Navy as well. My brother is currently serving in the Navy even to this day. My mother's father was also in the Navy, who served in World War II, and my father's father was in the Army, who served in the Korean War. Following their footsteps would be 3 additional uncles and 1 aunt who proudly served through the Vietnam War as well. One could say I come from a military family. I enlisted in June of 2001, approximately 4 months before the attacks on America. Shortly after the attacks, the people in my hometown asked if I would try to get out of my contract, if I try to back out, because it was obvious America was going to go to war. That thought had never crossed my mind. I knew what I had signed up for, I knew what my job would be, and I esteemed full speed ahead. Over my 20 years, I would come to understand that on time is late, that yeah is not a proper answer, and that unfortunately there would be many along with me and before me that would not come home from war. With that, today, we gather in remembrance and heartfelt gratitude to pay tribute to the valiant souls who served our country selflessly. The San Diego State War Memorial stands as a testament to the past students who have stepped forward with courage, valor, and unwavering dedication to protect our freedoms. It represents the sacrifice made by brave men and women who answered the call to duty, leaving the safety of their homes to defend our nation and uphold valor that we hold dear. Every name etched onto this monument represents lives lived, family connected, and a story of resilience and courage. Each one of these individuals had dreams, aspirations, and loved ones they deeply cherished. They stood for something larger than themselves. As we gather here today, let us remember the families of these heroes. They too made sacrifices, enduring the weight of uncertainty, the pain of loss. It is critical to honor and support them in ensuring that their loved one's legacy is never forgotten. We must carry the memories forward, not just in our words, but in our actions. So in the presence of this memorial, let us renew our commitment to honoring their legacy and pledge to stand as custodians of their valor. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Each year, the committee sponsors a writing contest in conjunction with this ceremony, in which the winners receive a cash prize. It is my pleasure to introduce two of our winners this year. Eamon King, a junior in graphic design, and Maya Baca, a second-year master's student in marriage and family therapy. I'd like to invite them up here to read their presentations, and that will be followed by our keynote speaker.
Thank you, sir, and good morning to everybody. As a 10-year Marine Corps veteran, it warms my heart to see a memorial like this at the college in the city I now call home. My first duty station was right up the street at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. And as a 21-year-old being deployed to the Middle East, I couldn't help but to think, who will remember my service if I died here? Would there be anybody to tell my story if I couldn't? The SDSU War Memorial stands to remind us that education in sunny San Diego sometimes comes with a price far more costly than tuition. It is here that the voice of our very own veterans who died in foreign lands, whose souls still whisper freedom across vast oceans, hoping that the people they died protecting will still remember their sacrifice. Some too young to vote, some who had kids, some who had degrees, all were Aztecs. A memorial for the ones who traded in caps and gowns for camouflage and gunpowder, dissertations for Desert Stand. This memory stands to remind all future generations of Aztecs that leadership starts here is more than just a slogan. Lest we forget that a question once was asked, whom shall we send and who will go for us? Lest we forget that Aztecs answered that call. 7 years later, removed from my first deployment, I am 29 now, and I'm proud to be an Aztec. I'm happy that the people and that the women and men of this country didn't forget the sacrifice that was given. For as long as this memorial stands, we all shall remember. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. As a young girl, I wasn't entirely sure of what really separated civilians and veterans from each other. After all, the only service I knew was rules and regulation, demands, and hardship. It wasn't until I began attending San Diego State University and saw the War Memorial every day on my way to class did I begin to understand the true significance and sacrifice of servicemen and women, especially those who gave the ultimate gift to the country we call home. I saw the grit and determination of the troops etched into the marble, and imagined the bravery etched onto the faces of troops staring fear in the face and grabbing onto their comrades for strength. I saw the precision of order and diligence in the slicing edges of the center point, a disciplined testament to the single, unyielding purpose of servitude that would not allow for defeat. I saw the way the engraved names so effortlessly fit into their slot next to the one saddled beside it, a brotherhood and a sisterhood that seemed to be as natural as birth order itself. I saw the humanity of the soldiers that chose to protect and serve, the selflessness in their sacrifice to give their ultimate being so that us civilians could sleep better and breathe easier. The War Memorial is not just a memory. It is a living, breathing oath that our veterans and troops know as intimately as they know their own bones and blood, to protect and to serve. For some who gave all, it is the reminder for the rest of us that their oath has been fulfilled and that their oath will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Great job, Eamon and Maya. Thank you very much. Thanks for your effort to put all that together, and congratulations on your writings. They're beautiful. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Gregory Daddis is the director of SDSU Center for War and Society, USS Midway Chair in Modern U.S. Military History, and Professor of History in the College of Arts and Letters. After graduating from West Point, Professor Daddis served for 26 years in the U.S. Army, retiring as a colonel. He is a veteran of Operations Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom, and his military awards include the Bronze Star, Legion of Merit, and Meritorious Service Medals. Professor Daddis specializes in research on the history of the Vietnam War and in the Cold War era. He has authored 5 books, numerous op-eds, and scholarly articles on military affairs in the field's leading journals. He currently serves on the Board of Trustees for the Society for Military History and is also a board member for the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Gregory Daddis.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. Well, to Marty and Jen and the entire SDSU War Memorial Committee, thank you for the absolute privilege to join this year's wreath laying ceremony. To President Delatorre, thank you for joining us today. It's always just an absolute honor to be with you in events like this. And to our alumni, welcome home. A black granite wall. Panel Whiskey 4, line 82. Life is fleeting for us all, and yet for Robert Conchadoin, his death has earned him a sense of permanence. On a memorial wall along the National Mall in Washington, D.C., Con's name is etched into that black granite, along with more than 58,000 U.S. service members who sacrificed all for a war that Americans simply call Vietnam. Con was an infantryman, a first lieutenant, a member of the U.S. Army's elite 101st Airborne Division. He was a son, a high school friend, a 25-year-old Californian from San Marino who had his entire life ahead of him. He arrived in South Vietnam on January 29th, 1971, and deployed to Quang Tri, the northernmost of South Vietnam's 44 provinces. It was the province closest to the demilitarized zone, and there was nothing demilitarized about it. Less than 2 months later, he was felled by hostile artillery fire. 2,413 other Americans would die in Vietnam that year. The number of Vietnamese deaths far, far exceeded that number. Now, in many ways, war is unimaginable, a hazy composite of individual acts in the most chaotic of human experiences. Some acts are courageous, others less so. Some soldiers go to war embracing a sense of patriotic duty, others questioning the use of violence itself. Some are outwardly proud of their service, others more reticent to share their experiences. And though we know some of the facts of Khan's all too short service in Vietnam, so many questions remain. All war is unimaginable. But on a day like this, when we honor this amazing university's veterans, I think it's important that we make war more imaginable. That we reflect not just on Khan and the reason his name is on this memorial before you, but on war itself. In doing so, I'd like to offer a bit of an uncomfortable proposition, if I may. Beyond events like this, and perhaps Veterans Day, war has become invisible for most Americans, even as we watch it unfold in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. Perhaps it's too easy to click off the TV and walk away. We don't imagine war. We don't debate the costs of war. We don't think about whether Khan's sacrifices made us safer or more secure, or those of the thousands and thousands of those who followed in his footsteps. For far too many Americans, paradoxically, as we watch it on TV, war has become unimaginable. And our reflex in the aftermath of the war in which Khan served, Vietnam, has been to honor the veteran at all costs, narrowing, I would argue, what we see as acceptable for debate when it comes to questions of national security. We don't want to challenge war for fear of dishonoring the veteran. And in the process, I might suggest, we engage in a form of war-based patriotism that isn't all that healthy for our democracy. But sentimentality and nostalgia about war, I think, can become dangerous when they're conflated with history. We need to remember war, but remember it as history and not as myth. Wars do not compose their own inherent meanings. We actually construct meaning on top of them. And so if I may be so bold, I'd like to suggest the meaning of Robert's ultimate sacrifice, and that meaning for us here today. The names etched on this memorial, like similar monuments across this great nation, should inspire us all to reflect on our citizenship and, more importantly, on our humanity. To me, the meaning of Khan's service should tell us something about our own service. And I'm not talking about service in uniform. Yes, those in the armed services, armed forces serve in a way that few people do, especially in today's all-volunteer force. But so too do firefighters and teachers and nurses and community organizers and rescue mission volunteers, to name but just a few. Service, that act of helping someone else, of doing work for someone else, for something larger than oneself, that's the legacy that we should cement here today. Let us do more than just honor Khan's name that is etched in this memorial behind me. Let's take meaning from it. Let's make meaning from it. And if we're going to make meaning from war's cost, then I think that meaning should be about selfless service to others. Let us all be active servants to those around us. Don't become lost in the veneration of the veteran, that you forget how important it is to our nation, and that your active citizenship depends on that service. Next week is Veterans Day, a holiday when we traditionally thank Americans for their service to this nation. This year, let's make Khan's legacy an inspiration for all of us, whether having worn a uniform or not, to reflect on how we can better serve our local communities, our friends and our families, and our nation as a whole during a year which has brought so many challenges to so many human beings. So here's the challenge for you today. Hopefully that one that resonates with you long after you leave this commemoration ceremony. If you want to thank a veteran like Khan, to truly honor his sacrifice and legacy, then be an American worth fighting for. Be an American worth sacrificing for. Rise above our current state of political divisiveness. I can tell you from personal experience, that's not what our veterans fight for. Find common ground with your neighbors. Conscientiously promote civil dialogue. Understand that disagreement need not mean disrespect. And serve. On similar days of commemoration like today, we think far too often of service as simply military service. But defense of our nation should not be the only way for us to define what it means to be a patriotic American. It's one thing to defend your country. It's another thing to have a country worth defending. The former, especially recently, has rested on a fraction of our population, but the latter requires something of us all. For the veterans in the audience, this actually means that your service isn't actually quite done yet either. I would ask you all to continue to set the example for all of us. Share your stories. Continue a dialogue with all of us about how your service has made you a better person in your families, with your friends, in your communities, or how you had to overcome adversity, or still struggling because of what you saw in service. It's hard, I know, but having examples sometimes is the best way to inspire others. If ceremonies like today are about honoring those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for their nation in times of war, then it seems we owe them to be the very best citizens we can be, to make them not just proud of their service, but to make them proud of who they served for. So I would leave you with this challenge. Let's all make meaning from Khan's service. Let's engage. Engage our communities, our business and political leaders, our families and our friends about what it means to serve this great nation of ours. Let's not just thank Robert Considine today for his service. Let's be better than that. Let us follow his example and all become an integral part of selfless service to this great nation. Go Aztecs.
Thank you, Greg. That's a welcome challenge. I appreciate that challenge, and I appreciate your thought-provoking words. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the wreath-laying portion of the ceremony, so I'd like to invite those who have brought floral tributes to please assemble in the back near Jen there by the wreaths. At this time, we will recognize each member on the memorial by name. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna switch to the floral tributes. Today's first wreath will be presented by the Shadoin family. In honor of Robert Shadoin. Presenting the wreath today are his sisters Margie Roberts and Michelle Ryan. The next wreath will be presented by SDSU alumni. Presenting the wreath today, Leanne Babcock. That was Major Leanne Babcock. The next wreath will be presented on behalf of military and veterans programs here at SDSU. Presenting the wreath, Colin Donahue. The next tribute will be presented on behalf of the 8th Air Force Historical Society. Presenting the wreath, Khan's high school classmate, Steve Snyder. The next wreath will be presented by David Shanes. At this time, we will recognize each member on the memorial by name and present them with bouquets totaling 240 red carnations as a personal tribute to each one. At the conclusion of the name reading, please stand for the playing of taps performed by the buglers from the Navy Band of the Southwest. And now, Student Veteran Organization Vice President Hunter Kocher will lead the reading of the names of the fallen.
Good morning. John E. Abbott, Raymond L. Adair, Herman H. Adelson, Robert M. Albert, James N. Amos, Martin F. Anderson, Thomas Aureliano Jr., Roger W. Armbruster, Richard D. Aubert, Alan R. Bailey, Richard H. Bailey, William E. Baldwin, Joe M. Barkley, John W. Bassett, William C. Batchelor, John I. Beck, Claire V. Burdell, Jack N. Berg, J. Burdett Binkley, John W. Borum, Frank S. Brasted, Warren W. Brown, Forrest P. Brown, Maxton Brown, Richard W. Birch, Jack Burgess, Bruce Van Buskirk, John C. Butler, Rao Kahlo, Wesley E. Carter, Gordon C. Chamberlain, Dennis R. Chamberlain, Richard Wilson Clark, Richard Winton Clark, Richard R. Clark, Robert W. Corcoran, Thomas H. Cozens, Harold D. Curry, George R. Dahl, Thomas James Davies, Edward B. Davis, Sherman Denny, Charles Dow, Leslie W. Duval, Wesley P. Ebby, Howard J. Engel, Clifford G. Erdman, George R. Ewing, Adelbert Faulconer, Paul E. Fern, Don L. Finney, Gilbert O. Spitzel, Howard Lisbon, John R. Frazier, Claude Frickerson, Jack Frost, Robert L. Fuller, Lyman J. Gage, Joseph N. Gates, Quentin B. Gaddy, Al Goodall.
William S. Goodchild, Robert Daniel Graham, Robert A. Griffith, Frank J. Glosty, Stanley G. Gue, George E. Hammond, Warren E. Hand, James C. Hardin, William S. Hardshaw, Mason Harris, William Headington, Edward L. Imblum, Douglas A. Jacks, Kenneth L. Johnson, Paul W. Johnston, Charles P. Jones, Richard F. Cates, Arthur J. Kelly, James D. Coaster, Paul Kramer, Robert J. Landis, Wendell E. Langford, James G. Leonard, Alan F. Levine, Jack Maida, Howard E. McBride, Lyle G. McLaughlin, John B. McGrew, George R. Moore, Francis H. Moore, Ray E. Moore, Kenneth B. Moyer, Raymond W. Mueller, Russell Newberry, John R. Nolan, Frank D. Oliver, Donald C. Owen, Royal A. Parks, James P. Parks, Sam J. Patella, Robert G. Patterson, A. Milky Phelps, Leo Poole, Craig Potter, Gilbert Kwan, Lynn E. Rogers, Kramer W. Rohrig, George D. Rosado, Richard W. Roth, James Routh, Francis R. Ryan, Alvin D. Sachs, William E. Sage, James Samuels, Joseph H. Savage, Richard J. Sawaya, Edward L. Searle III, Maxwell B. Sherwood, Bill B. Shropshire, and Faffel Simpson.
Fred Simpson, Paul Saraton, Thomas A. Skinner, Curry B. Smith, Robert H. Smith, Frederick B. Smith, Samuel C. Spade, John F. Stevenson, Victor R. Talbot, William H. Taylor, Ross A. Tenney, Clarence F. Terry, Jerry E. Thomas, Alan Thomas, Walter L. Tickener, Parker Toten, Frank R. Redusco, John H. Vogt, John T. Vogt, Peter L. Valls, Russell D. Wahlberg, Mark P. Wagnes, Donald A. Weber, Lawrence J. Werner, Clarence White, Clea E. Williams, Robert James Williams, Maurice G. Wilson, Louis M. Wynn Jr., Charles M. Witt, William T. Wood, John H. Adams, Isaac S. Best, Byron H. Chase, Kenneth W. Cox, Robert Dowdy, Norman N. Freeman, Huron G. Glotfelder, Donald H. Haig, Robert G. Harvey, Charles C. Kinney, William R. Lake, Donald W. McCormick, Charles R. Miller, Leroy A. Morgan Jr., Robert C. Nita, Thomas H. O'Brien, Lester F. Page, William R. Patton, Richard Phillips, George C. Pierce Jr., Willis Preston Smith, Herbert L. Tompkins, Robert Joseph Williams, Francis A. Barnes, Gerald D. Bell, Howard R. Bowling, William J. Bradshear, Ronald H. Brown, Michael T. Burns.
Daniel L. Carrier, Rodney B. Carter, David M. Christian, Michael J. Crawford, James P. Crook, Darrell W. Kroom, Ronald L. Davidson, Richard A. Delady, Thomas F. Durbin, Lauren E. Engstrom, John L. Flynn, Robert M. Foley, Ralph E. Folks Jr., Peter W. Gilmore, Larry Himmer, Henry Hudson Jr., Dennis A. Jenkins, Stephen D. Joyner, Frederick M. Cash, Robert M. Kurlick, Kenneth J. Lamberton, James F. Lang, John J. Lewandowski, Victor W. Liu, John P. Markin Jr., Jeffrey L. Martin, James M. Mitchell Jr., Ronald E. Morgan, Maurice C. Morrell, William C. Neistel, Charles L. Parker Jr., George W. Pearson Jr., Walter J. Peters, Terry W. Ratcliffe, Eugene L. Rathman, Gerald R. Roberts, Robert W. Romero, Paul W. Rose, David J. Rose, Gerald M. Rumble III, Richard L. Russell, Charles J. Scarf, John W. Tunnell, John A. Vogt, William E. Walters, George W. Ward, Ulyss N. B. Wilkes Jr., Gene T. Wright, Matthew G. Axelson, Florence Bakong Cho, Jason W. Davis, Christian J. Hescock, Oscar A. Jimenez, Andrew D. Lamont, Justin L. O'Donohoe, Jason J. Painter, Thomas E. Retzer, Robert Kahn Chadoin.
Please be seated. I'd like to give a special thanks to the Navy Band of the Southwest for being here today. You guys are great every year. I know you have a very busy calendar, and we're honored that you could make it to this ceremony today. Thank you for being here, and great job. I never want to miss thanking Jen Rinaldo for all that she does throughout the year. Jen, over at the Alumni Association, is our person Friday who can do everything and can handle everything. No challenge is too big for her, and she pulls this off every year. And we're just so thankful that you're part of this ceremony and part of our group. I want to thank all the members of the War Memorial Committee that are here today, and those who couldn't make it today. You help us plan this throughout the year, and we try to make this a great event. And I think we end up with the best speakers and the best writers, and it just ends up being a really good ceremony. Thanks to all the work that you do every year trying to put this together. We're really grateful, and you're all volunteers. So thank you for being a part of this for us. Thank you, the audience, for attending today. And I want to remind you that if you don't know already, there's a reception at the Veterans Center, the SDSU Veterans Center, right down the pathway here. Everyone is invited. There'll be some a little bit of food, a little bit of beverages, and we would like to ask you to join us. And you can meet anybody in person that you like. Thanks again for being here, everybody. And this concludes our ceremony. We'll see you next year.